Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I'm very excited today to welcome Dr. John Molesky to the show, who's an internationally recognized leader and consultant in the field of advanced materials. For those of you who don't know him, he's a professional engineer, a scientist, an inventor, an entrepreneur, a writer, a publisher, an editor, and a lecturer, and more. He's a retired staff member of Los Alamos National Labs and has worked as a staff member at Exxon Research Center and was involved at the Thiokol Chemical Rocket Engine Division. He has his own research company and is a holder of over 30 patents. He has 42 publications and has edited 4 books in his field. He has DVDs out that you can buy. Dr. Milewski has a way of synthesizing the most advanced knowledge that's necessary to prepare for the coming times, what we should start preparing for in terms of decentralized energy, about how the spirit works in the magnetic realm. We're going to talk about magneto-electricity. We're going to talk about something called SuperLight, which is going to excite the heck out of most of you, and certainly has for me. And he's going to share the distinction between knowing and knowledge, which is a gateway to understanding what has to be known today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. John Molesky to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim. Thank you very much. You're very kind with all the good words you say here. But I appreciate it. I think you did a pretty good job of covering most of the stuff, you know. In fact, kidding around the place, the guy says, well, what are you famous for? What should we call you? I said, well, you could almost call me a wizard, or you could almost call me a mad scientist, or something in between, you know. And a typical little story is that I have a process where we're getting gold out of with microwaves, getting it out of beer bottles and glass and stuff like this. So my 9-year-old granddaughter hears this thing. She says, Grandpa is making gold? He must be a wizard if he's doing that. But then she comes up to her mother and says, you know, Grandpa can't be a real wizard without a wizard suit. So guess what I got for Christmas 2 years ago? For Christmas, they made me a wizard suit.
That's darling.
So now I'm officially a wizard because I got a wizard suit.
That's absolutely darling.
Better than the words itself.
See how Harry Potter has excited the masses?
Yeah, well, you know, it's the same kind of thing. The people are ready to this idea that we're more than just a bag of bones and a bunch of physical stuff, you know. We have an insight. We have part of the creativity in us and stuff. And we have a lot more going for us than we're giving credit for. In fact, most of the schools and all the training and all that stuff, I think there's a little conspiracy there to try to dumb down people and stuff. Well, really, it should be, with help of Kim's program here, is that we could awaken the people to the true value of who we really are. We're really advanced spiritual beings. We've been dumbed down by forces, and, you know, there's all kinds of hanky-panky stuff going on. But it's time to awaken, and people want to awaken. That's why they're accepting these new ideas about what's going on and stuff. And to me, the biggest, newest thing that we have to be more aware of, you know, Dr. Becker wrote a book that says Body Electric. I'm about to write a book saying Spirit Magnetic. Our body is electric energy, and spirit is a magnetic energy. You know, you hear this thing, electromagnetic. Well, for the last 400 years, we've been pushing everything called electricity. You know, Benjamin Franklin fly this kite 400 years ago and see this spark come down. He said, this is real energy. This stuff called electricity. We got to do something to capture this energy to use things. And so for 400 years, guys like Voltaire came around, and Ampere and Faraday, and then eventually Tesla and everybody else, they started making radios and we went to television. Now we're into this computer. Everything is electric. Well, be prepared for change, because after the pole shift, most of that electricity stuff isn't going to work. We have to get away from electricity into what I call magnetricity. Electricity is the flow of electric monopoles. Magnetricity is the flow of magnetic monopoles.
I have to interrupt you a little bit here. I know you could go like a starship fast.
Yeah.
I want to bring you back a minute. When you talk about magnetricity, but also the magnetic dipoles, are you talking about the work of Philip Callahan, that revelation?
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's where I got the first idea. Phil Callahan should have won the Nobel Prize 20 years ago. He detected magnetic monopoles. And most of these guys don't even believe it. I think Derek was the first guy saying that there's such a thing as a magnetic monopole. We can't prove it at that. But Callahan proved it 20 years ago. He should have got the Nobel Prize for that. But, the problem is with all this stuff is you can't write a book about physics unless you're a physics. You can write a thing and get it published because there's too much of this peer review. If you're not one of the boys, they don't count it anymore.
Well, also the peer review process, what I've understood after doing a segment on it, is that the peer review process acts as a kind of dragon guarding the gate of existing understanding, but not new knowledge.
Just between us girls, nobody else. Like half of these Nobel Prizes, I don't know the details on all of them, but all I know, one guy lies, the other guy swears to it, and he wins a Nobel Prize for it. They detect they detect neutrinos, and I don't think neutrinos even exist, and they haven't proved it enough. Then recently at the CERN thing, they says, they finally discovered something traveling faster than the speed of light. I've been saying that for 20 years, and it didn't cost me $50 billion to prove that. And Callahan was talking about this stuff 20 years ago, and I picked up on what he did. I picked up on what Bill Tiller did and stuff. And he talks about he called SuperLight superluminescence. He talks about stuff traveling faster than the speed of light. He talks about magneto-electric energy, and that's what my SuperLight is. Regular energy is electromagnetic. SuperLight is magneto-electric. So there's a yin and a yang of energy. There's a one electromagnetic wave that travels with energy called light, and the whole electromagnetic spectrum, light, radio waves, microwaves, cosmic rays, X-rays, all the way down to the whole thing. That's all very different forms of electromagnetic energy. I say there's another whole spectrum of energy that's 10 billion times more powerful, and it's mostly magneto-electric energy. It's mostly magnetic in nature and travels 10 billion times faster. It travels at c squared.
Okay, hold it now. Hold it right there. When you say it travels 10 billion times faster, where do you get that from?
It comes out of Maxwell's equations. Maxwell, when, right after this electromagnetic radio was invented, all the top mathematicians wanted to come up with a mathematical solution to this. So Maxwell got together with Faraday's equations, Voltaire's equations, all the different work that was done on electromagnetism, and came up with his famous wave equation. So if you put positive numbers in Maxwell's wave equation, he comes out with a definition of what regular light is, or radio waves. He says, from a point source, or an antenna, traveling out into space in all directions, at the speed of light, it's a wave that's mostly electromagnetic in nature, mostly electrical with a small magnetic component, and that's called regular light. But if you take Maxwell's equation and put in negative numbers, any good mathematical equation is just as valid whether you put positive or negative numbers. But if you put negative numbers into Maxwell's equation, guess what? You're coming out with something that's mostly magnetic in nature, traveling 10 billion times faster than the speed of light, and it's traveling into the antenna. So it's coming from outer space somewhere. And so I believe that, if you looked at recent pictures of galaxies, they show these spiral galaxies. They see a jet coming out of the core. These galaxies are rotating, and at the axis of rotation, you see jets of energy coming out the north and south, out of the top and bottom of these things. That's SuperLight coming out of these things. Inside of these galaxies, as they get concentrated and get hotter and hotter, you get to a new form of matter. Regular matter is mostly electrical and a small amount of magnetic energy. This is mostly magnetic or a small amount of electrical energy. And the temperatures inside these galaxies, or these what you call so-called black holes, which aren't really black, they're radiant beings of SuperLight.
I want to just go back for a moment before you go any further. You talked about a pole shift, and not that I want this whole thing to be about a potential pole shift, but for people who do not accept that there will be a pole shift, or if there's confusing information for the public, you say it like a fact, and the question is always on the cycle of time. So even if there's not a pole shift, why is it that it's really important that we prepare to go into magnetic energy or magnetricity versus electricity?
Well, because my understanding, and I'm not no way of proving this, but I hear this from I'm on the internet and I listen to a lot of people that much more into this the physics of what's or the astronomy of what's going on here, and they say that because our sun belongs to the galaxy called the Milky Way, and the typical Milky Way or galaxy is about 100,000 light years in diameter and about 400 billion stars. So this is a big disk of rotating stars, and as it rotates, the stars on the outer side they don't stay in a disk. It's sort of like a record or a flat plate, but the outer edges of the plate wobble a little bit, so they dip down in one side and up and down, and what it is, our sun now is dipping down into what they call the galactic plane. There's a plane which represents the center of this rotating disk, and it's mostly magnetic in nature, high levels of magnetic energy. And when the sun is going to go through that, it's going to be getting much more magnetically activated. And, then as a result, it gets magnetically activated. You get magnetic storms or solar flares, and all this stuff is spitting out energy toward the Earth. And that energy affects the magnetosphere around the Earth, and it also affects the ionosphere, which is the outer electrical charge around the Earth, and then that affects the jet stream, and the jet stream affects the weather. That's why I believe all this crazy weather stuff is coming. It's coming from the sun. A certain amount is from our pollution and upgrading it, but let's say it's only 5 or 10% of that. But most of it's coming from the sun, and the sun is as it rotates every 25,000 years to make this complete rotation. Twice on a term, it dips down into this magnetic field, a magnetosphere, plane, and it activates the sun into these much heavier solar flares and stuff like this. And so this is what's coming. And all the astronomers and physicists and stuff who look at this stuff know that. I don't have a telescope. I don't look at that, but I hear these guys talking. And it makes sense to me because I feel this magnetic energy is coming in more. And independent of that, in my own studies, I kind of believe that we are human beings are special kind of entities here. Our body is made of mostly electrical energy, and our spirit is made of mostly magnetic energy. So we're creatures of body and spirit. So Dr. Becker wrote a book. He says, Body Electric. And everything runs on. You eat your Wheaties and you flex your bones, electrons jump back and forth. But I think we have a spiritual body which is made of mostly magnetic energy. And when we have emotions and feelings and attributes, work with attributes of the spirit, it's mostly magnetic in nature. And so, and as a result, that's why so many people all over the world are getting emotionally involved. Look what's happening, the Arab Spring or anything else. Everybody's having an emotional shit fit, if you excuse the word.
Sure.
But something like this, they feel something coming. Their emotions are getting activated. So it's just like, so they blame it on the nearest thing, whether it's this president or it's this Arab here or this, their religions, their philosophy. They're trying to find what's the cause of this, causing me to be so emotionally upset, and I got to clean this up because it's driving me crazy. They think they go out and kill a few people, it's going to solve their problem. It's not. You're not going to, no matter how many people you kill here, not going to stop the sun from dipping into this magnetic field.
But is this part of the solar minimum? There's solar maximums and there's...
That's an 11-year cycle. We're talking about is 12,000 year cycle.
Okay.
It's much bigger, much stronger, more powerful, much different energy.
Okay, so it's a completely separate phenomenon.
It's a different thing, just like seconds are different from hours, and hours are different from days, and days are different from years. And these, instead of years, these are super years. 12,000, it dips down once, and another 12,000, it dips up again. So it's 25,000 to make the complete round. But this is a really biggie coming on magnetic energy, and in fact, it's going to affect the spirit. And those whose spirits are on the using most of the emotional and feelings and stuff addressed toward love and caring and healing are going to be energized really strong. And those on the other side, have hatred and anger and all that why the good are getting gooder and the bad are getting badder.
There's something called the Carrington effect. Whatever it is, it's like EMP. People are worried that everything electrical will be shut down and inoperable.
That comes from 3 or 4 different sources. It's interesting you brought that up because, in order to switch from a whole energy system based on electromagnetics, we're going to have to switch to based on magneto-electric. Instead of electricity, it's going to be magnetricity. And people have it a different name and all that stuff. But in order for that to happen, the old way has to go away, which might be the Carrington effect. Nothing electrical will work. You keep hearing of this even from the prophecies, the Catholic prophecies back in Garabandal, the same 3 days of darkness, and then they say nothing electrical is going to work. I heard that 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago when I was first reading. I was born and brought up number one Cadillac Catholic, and so we checked out all these prophecies and stuff, and they were talking about nothing electrical was going to work from either Fatima or Garabandal. Some of these early prophecies, the kids talk to the Virgin Mary and get this stuff. But independent of the Catholic stuff and everything else, other sources are saying the same thing. Strictly physicists and astronomers and stuff like this. If this thing happens, it's going to knock out, if the big solar flare comes in, it's going to knock out the ionosphere to a degree. We had cases of this before. I think in 1850, something like that, a big solar flare came in and burned out the wires going into the batteries on all these telegraph systems. We didn't have telephones and all that, but the telegraph, even their batteries got burned out and jumped from overloading the line to act as antennas. Now imagine a big solar flare coming along now. We don't have batteries. We have big transformers running thousands of billions of energy to whole cities like Albuquerque. We got 500,000 people here. If a solar flare came in and burns out our transformers, let's say we have 20 transformers running the solar grid, running the power into Albuquerque. I'm sure they only burn out about every 20 years, so they probably have 2 or 3 spare transformers. Solar flare comes in and aims at Albuquerque and knocks out 20 transformers. They only have 2. And if it does it at other stations, how many spare transformers do you have? And then if the electricity is not working, how can you make new transformers? So be prepared for days of darkness, these guys say. And it's nothing to do with mystics, or there's no little Maxwell's demons on the sun. It's a normal cycle of the sun going around, causing extra electric and magnetic energy. And this magnetic energy is going to get, solar flares are going to overdose the system. And so I keep telling everybody, keep your gas tanks full, because if the power goes out, they can't pump gasoline. So you have no gasoline, and you keep your tanks full all the time. But we thought that just because about a month and a half ago, at the East Coast, 3 million people lost the electricity.
They were down for like 10 days. Frightening.
Some places they were down for weeks. And so this is going to happen where it might be down for 3 months at a time and stuff. So this is going to happen. It's in the cycle already. These things happen every so many times. We're dipping into it now.
Here's the thing, though. I've always felt like we should have set up decentralized energy anyway, so that wherever you are, you have your own magnetic systems that are driving your energy. And the problem is that there's a lot of people interested in magnetism. Some people even claim that they have a whole new form of energy. Some people in Belgium, these very expensive systems. But I really think that people need to access their own energy and to be able to either assemble something or buy something that makes them be able to function.
Well, I agree with you. In fact, I was thinking of this, they're talking, the Republicans or Democrats, don't make solar energy, don't make earth changes a political thing. It happens all the time, and stuff like that. People, we don't believe in global warming and all that stuff. But listen to the secret. The word is global warming. Guess what the globe is? 80% water. So when the sun shines and gets the water hot, 98% of the energy is absorbed in water, but only about 50% on the land.
FYI, I've done about 200 hours of focused work on climate and weather. And my assessment is that the same forces that want to make money in the derivatives market and are are also trading in the carbon markets, and they've demonized carbon. I mean, we're made of carbon. It's crazy stuff. But what you're talking about, which has to do with cycles, I totally can appreciate, because that's what I've gotten out of the 35 interviews I've done in the last 3 years.
Water has averaged 1.5 degrees centigrade. So the average vapor pressure over the oceans is about 10% more than it used to be. So that's what we just saw last week or so. There was a storm came up the East Coast. Normally you get a good storm, you get from 2 to 5 inches of rain. They're getting 5 to 10 inches because there's more moisture in the air. So when the cold front comes down and hits that, it dumps more of it out of it. So the global warming is the ocean that's warming up more so than the land, and the vapor pressure over the ocean is greater. If there's more moisture in the air, it's going to dump more of it and stuff. And so, that's probably what's the biggest change that you can notice right away is these extra heavy rains and floods and stuff like that. And it's all over the world. They're getting floods in eastern Australia, getting floods in India, they're getting floods in, all over the world. Everybody, Japan has had floods, and, it's happening all over.
The spraying projects that are going on all over NATO countries, day in and day out, of spraying the air with metallic particulates.
Oh, you're talking about the
chemtrails.
The jet planes, yeah.
Yeah.
The contrails.
Well, they call them contrails. You know what I'm
call
talking about. But I can't believe that in the equation of looking at effects, the globalists have not looked at the fact that this is going on, that it's perceivable, it's obvious, and there's particulates found on the ground, on the snow, on the water, on the plants, and this has got to affect what you and I understand to be weather changes as well. I mean, they're covering the atmosphere with metals.
Oh, yeah, it's mostly aluminum and barium,
right,
and some calcium, and these are long-lasting particles, and they're not good for the health. More people are getting asthma, more kids are getting sick, all kinds of stuff. It's the same thing whether it's dumbing down the mind or dumbing down the body. There's people in control of these things, and I've seen some websites where they actually show pictures of these big tanks of fluids inside the planes, and they have nozzles and sprays mounted on the outside with pumps and everything so they can spray these damn chemicals. So it's real. These guys have these orders to go out and spray this stuff.
Very much like Monsanto has a mission to control food across the world from the seed to the final product. Raytheon owns the patents for weather engineering that Tesla created.
Yeah.
And so it's very complicated, but I'm wondering, since we're talking about magnetic energy, how you think this may come to play in the interference of the normal cycle of weather for us.
Well, they're doing what they can. I don't like to use this word, the elite or the Illuminati or something, but somebody higher up is in charge, and they control the money, and they control the military. 2/3 of the military budget goes into black projects.
Yeah, I understand.
So that they could keep themselves healthy. They got hundreds of cities they made underground and all this kind of stuff to survive for 50 years because they know they build big telescopes down in Antarctica and stuff. They know these big planets are coming, whether you call it Nibiru or Planet X or some comet or something, and they're going to affect. They're activating the sun even more so, and then the gravitational effect of these planets and stuff are going to. The whole thing is going to change. And they says, well, we'll take care of ourselves with these cities underground. One thing they don't realize, well, this is my theory, is everything, they have to pump fresh air down into there. But electricity is not going to work unless they have a whole system based on magnetricity. They're going to go down, the doors are going to lock, and they're going to be in there for 50 years.
With all the money in black budgets, don't you think if they have a Maglev train that goes 10 to 12,000 miles an hour using a vacuum
tube? They have
tube,
all that stuff, yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're using that, and we don't get to use that above ground here. So if they have access to that, come on, John, they've got to have access to an advanced form of energy down there.
Oh, they do. They do have the stuff, but I still think they're going to get themselves locked in because there's something... we're getting back to this question asked about knowing.
Yes.
And the difference between knowing and knowledge. There's still things they think they're smart asses and they know everything. But, there's a basic thing, the smarter you think you are, the easier you can get yourself into a trap. You have to be smart enough to stick your nose into some place. Oh, this is so great. And they don't know all the answers yet, and they're going to get their fingers burned and stuff. And so, but then, no, that's philosophy. I mean, it's speculation. So I like to talk about things I really feel I know.
Right. No, I don't want to talk about the politics, but my original question to you in this area was, how is the spraying going on globally impacting our magnetic ability as well as the magnetosphere, the ability to have magnetricity? Is it going to impact that?
No, I don't think it's going to stop us from doing that. My understanding and the way I'm working on my magnetic battery, magnetic lights and stuff like this, that's not going to have anything. We're going to make thousands and millions of little things, like little black boxes that everybody have. And I'm working on a flashlight where instead of putting batteries into it, and you have to worry about how long the batteries are going to last, and you have to put them in right or left and all that kind of stuff, and then worry about the filament burning out. I'm going to make one where you don't put a battery in, you put a magnet in. Instead of electricity flowing, it's going to be magnetricity flowing. And that's not going to... And as long as the Earth has a magnetic field, this is going to work. And as long as there's galaxies out there spewing out SuperLight, we're in this field of SuperLight, magneto-electric energy.
Wait, I want to bring you back for 1 minute before you talk about the galaxy and the stars. And I want to address something with you. I interviewed Dr. Dean Bonnelly, and one of the things he said was that it is appearing as if the Earth is losing 5% of its magnetic field every 100 years. Now, why could that be happening?
Oh, that's happening. That's happened before. It's happened, and it reverses too from north to south. They have it recorded in the rocks, on the lava rocks around these big volcanoes, the direction in which the magnetic particles in the lava are aiming. And there's been 75 major magnetic field shifts in the last 200 million years. And so it happens regularly. And so it goes down and then it comes back up again. But even independent of that, that's only the magnetic energy from the Earth. But there's, as I say, 400 billion stars in our galaxy. But there's 400 billion galaxies, each of them spewing out magneto-electric energy, SuperLight. So we live in this field of energy. You hear them talking about an ether and stuff, and this is the fifth element. In fact, I was watching some of the stuff on the Mayan prophecies. The Mayan prophecies say this year a new form of energy is going to be identified. You have the four elements. You got earth, air, fire, and water. Then the fifth element is going to be called ether. And ether is this SuperLight energy. They're discovering it's the energy of the spirit and the energy of the future and all that stuff. And they predicted that will be detected at that time. And I've been talking about that for 20 years. I call it SuperLight, but it's another name for a three-dimensional ether.
I want to talk to you about SuperLight. I want you to lay out again what it is. Why do you call this ether SuperLight?
People have been talking about an ether for years. I mean,
like Steiner?
Well, yeah, over 100 years, right after they've been trying to identify something called an ether. And they did Maxwell and not Maxwell, but those two guys ran that experiment and said, oh, there's no such thing as an ether, but they made mistakes in their experiment. So they're beginning to see that now. So this idea of an ether or of a three-dimensional energy form has been around for quite a while, but I'm identifying. Some people call it 0 point. Some people call it gravity energy. Some people they all have a different name.
Or the unified field.
Yeah, everybody has a different name for it. I identify it as magneto-electric energy. If you say it's a 0 point, what can you do with a zero? You can't do a thing with it. But if you know it's magneto-electric, you know the energy is magnetic in nature, then you know what you want. You want to work with something that works with magnetic energy. And so that's the whole idea of it. You identify what the energy is, then you could do something with it. But if you call it a zero or a gravity or something like this, you don't know. What do you work with? You have to have something, design equipment that has certain things associated with it, you know? And so to me, it's magneto-electric energy. It comes out of Maxwell's equation. He says there's two solutions to his equation. One is electromagnetic, the other is magneto-electric. One is mostly electrical in nature with a small small magnetic component. And the other is mostly magnetic in nature with a small electrical component. So regular light travels at the velocity of light, c. Magnetic light travels at c squared 10 billion times faster than that. This idea of superlight allows us to communicate with the whole universe. So right now, if you use a regular radio wave, and you send it to the nearest star, someone catches your message and sends one right back. It's 4 light years out, 4 light years back. It takes 8 years to get a message over. But at the speed of superlight, it's 2.5 milliseconds round trip. And so that allows us, even a typical galaxy, a big galaxy from one side to the other, 100,000 light years, 100,000 years to get a message from one side to the other. At the speed of superlight, it's only 3 minutes. So that means you hear of this stuff, these star trips traveling and we're communicating back home to space. They can do that now. We have the ability, we will have the ability to do intergalactic travel and intergalactic communication by working on magneto-electric instead of electromagnetic. You're working with superlight. Radios and televisions and communications will all be based on energies that could travel 10 billion times faster. And it opens up the whole space for us. Even from one end of the universe to the other, they say it's 10 billion light years away. Well, that's only 1 year at the speed of superlight because we're 10 billion times faster. So I'm convinced in my knowing that all these UFOs, all these intergalactic travel in space and all that stuff, they're working on superlight energy. So there's energy out there, and you don't have to take any fuel with you because the space is full of this magnetic field and energy of superlight. You just make yourself a solar cell that collects superlight energy instead of regular energy, and you could travel any place in the universe. There's no problem there.
Except the FAA may have problems.
Right. They're still traveling at snail's pace, The point is, God created the universe for us to know and understand. It's simple. I say you don't have to be a 10th dimensional Einstein mathematician to understand. It's simple. Everything is in forms of light. There's regular light and superlight. It's yin and yang. The magnetic energy, electrical energy. It's all there. It's all there for us to know. So God created the universe. You don't have to be a Einstein. Just know that everything is in light in 2 different forms. Now that we know and understand there's 2 forms of energy, that opens up the whole universe to us. We're not limited to stay here on Earth. Like just even going to Mars and back, we're having trouble carrying enough fuel with us. But there's no problem with fuel because the whole universe is full of this superlight energy. There's 400 billion galaxies spewing out magneto-electric energy. No matter 1 cubic inch anywhere in the universe contains enough energy to run the whole country for a year. So we have all the energy we need. It's there in the form, and if we stop making bombs and concentrate on the God-given energies and powers and information we have, we could go and do anything. We're not going to be short on energy for making food or fuel and everything else. And you're getting even the simple stuff like I've been working with this magnetic water, and you put it on trees and plants, they grow like mad.
Let's talk about the magnetic water. You're known for making magnetic water, and there's all kinds of images on different websites about you doing it. One of the inventors I met in Arizona insists that we should clean the water with magnetite, zeolite, and KDH and keep it at 39 degrees, cold. It's where it's densest. Obviously, Victor Schauberger, that was one of his influences.
Oh, yeah, Schauberger, I love that.
And others. But the question is, you're talking about charging water in a different way, charging it versus cleaning it. Talk a little bit about it.
It all helps. I'm not an expert on water. All I know is that because of the charge between the oxygen and hydrogen, you could change the bond angle. When you change the bond angle, water clusters into different forms, and those different clusters that it makes, it could store and hold energy and store and hold other other electrons and other elements in different form, which I call Ormus materials, where the diamagnetic gases that are in the air, and those diamagnetic energy gases contain this magnetic energy that stimulates plant growth and everything else like this. I'll tell you how to make the magnetic water. My process is extremely simple. Basically, all I do is I go out and gather magnetite, which is nearby where I live. Because I look out my window to the east, I see Sandia Mountain. It goes almost 11,000 feet. It's a granite mountain. All granite contains magnetite. So 2% of that mountain is magnetite, and the 17 arroyos, when it rains, the water rushes part of that mountain and breaks up into gravel and sand. And I go into the arroyos and see these black streaks in there, and I go in with a big magnet and pick this stuff up. It's pure magnetite, Fe3O4. It's a high quality. The crystals have been rolling and tumbling along. They still have crystal facets. Some of them have pipe pyramids, and some have triangles and stuff like this. So it's a really good quality magnetite, about 20 to 50 mesh size material, a nice medium clean sand. But if you put that sand make a cylinder out of it, you get yourself 2 containers, say an oatmeal container, which is 5 inches in diameter. Then you go to the post office and buy a 3-inch mailing tube. Cut them both at 8 inches tall, stick the small tube inside the big one. Now you have a cylinder space about 1 inch wide. You fill up with magnetite. Now you have a 3-inch hole in there that you could take a standard 24-ounce spring bottle water and stick it in there for 3 or 4 days, and it gets energized. And then you take that stuff, you drink it, and it helps you feel a little peppy and healthier. You can look on my website and see about people's hair turns darker from the gray, and fingernails grow faster, and gums and stuff feel better and everything. But if you pour it on the plants, as Callahan says, he was talking about paramagnetic rocks. Well, it has a magnetic field, and that diamagnetic energy that's in there, I put it on my wife's geranium. In a year and a half, it grew 9 feet tall. I put it on my wife's garden, and it gets so overstuffed that it's creeping out all over the sidewalk. Chrysanthemums that would normally be 18 inches tall are 36 inches tall, 50 inches in diameter. Everything grows 2 to 3 times. Are anyone familiar with nasturtiums? So it's a nice little vine, has little flowers on it. Normally, the leaf is 1 to 1.5 inches diameter, and the vines are 6 to 8 inches long, maybe 10 inches. Then the leaves, instead of being 1.5 inches diameter, are 5 to 6 inches in diameter. And the vine, instead of being 10 inches long, are 5 to 6 feet long. And the flowers, instead of being 1.5 inches diameter, are 2 inches in diameter. So everything grows bigger and faster with magnetic energy added to it.
Now, you're using it in plastic. Why do you choose plastic to put the water in?
Because it's convenient, it's easy, and it holds the glass. It's 2 or 3 times thicker and 2 or 3 times heavier. And you ain't get as much water into it. And after you use the plastic 3 or 4 times, use the same thing over and over again. You're going to get some leaching, but that stops after the first 2 or 3 times. And if you, I wouldn't worry about a few chemicals. Our body is so polluted with chemicals now, just breathing the air, eating anything, and even everything you have is in a plastic bag or something. So a few molecules of plastic isn't going to kill us. But you get so much more out of having the magnetic energy in there. Now, when the body is strong and the spirit is strong, it could heal and clean itself up really easily. And like I said earlier, body electric, spirit magnetic. And when you need healing, guess what? The healing is directed by the spirit or the soul. And so if the soul and the spirit are healthy, it could heal the body and cure the body and stuff until the energy goes to the right place, whether you have a bad foot or an ankle or a tooth or your hair. It's interesting about hair turning. It shows you that it's an energy phenomenon. People drink this magnetic water and their hair turns from gray to black. And it turns one hair at a time, and it turns from the root to the end, the whole length of the hair, whether it's 2 inches or 10 inches or 15 inches long. When it changes, the whole length of the hair from one end to the other changes overnight, bang, it goes from gray to black. Or you've heard of the reverse effect. A person has a big emotional shock in their life, their hair turns gray overnight. The whole length of the hair, it doesn't turn at the root and then grow out dark or gray. It doesn't grow out black. You don't see, when you drink magnetic water and your hair color changes, it changes from one end to the other. Not all of them, selectively, hairs at a time, change. So whole length. And then so that's like your fingernails or something. It's made out of some form of protein, but it has some energy power that runs up and down the whole length of the hair and makes it change. Now, I don't understand how that happens. Well, I know it does. And so it would be an interesting phenomenon for a graduate student to study that or something, to figure out what mechanism is it, what wave or form of energy is flowing from the root to the end to make the whole color change.
Have you met David Ray Hudson?
Oh, Dave Hudson, yes.
Dave Hudson, I'm sorry, Dave Hudson.
Yeah, I met him once. I heard him talk. I didn't meet him. I talked to him on the phone and wrote him a letter a couple of times. Yeah, he's been in some trouble off and on with his process, but he opened up this whole idea of what you might call Ormus energy, Ormus atoms and stuff like this. And I've been doing a lot of work and actually converting Ormus into metal.
I just want to finish the part about the magnetic water. Okay. The magnetic water takes a few days to charge, correct?
Yeah, at first I recommended 5 days, but then I did some more studies. In 3 days, you get 98% of the change. It doesn't change much more than that. So if you put your bottle in this cylinder that contains magnetite, within 3 days the water is energized, and you could last in your refrigerator for about a week. And you drink that stuff, all kind of goodies things start to happen. It takes about 3 or 4 months, and you start to see the hair in the back of the head start to change and go from gray to white. And it creeps around the side. The last part to do is over the ears, the side of your hair. And then the mustache and the beard changes very slowly because there's the thicker hairs, and they're a little more. But normally you get at least 50% of the hair changing. What
kind of health benefits did you personally notice charging your water, aside from this?
The people ask me, well, you've been drinking that stuff for 10 years now. Well, so I said, after 2 or 3 years, you start to see something else change. Besides most all the physical effects take place within the 3 to 6 months or a year, and then it kind of holds after that. But what I found after 2 or 3 years, I thought to see some spiritual benefits. I don't like to use the word spirit, but remember I said body electric, spirit magnetic?
Yes.
The spirit is magnetic in nature. And I say drinking magnetic water is like drinking Starbucks for the soul. You start to see advantages, intuition, creativity, initiation, all kinds of attributes of the spirit all kinds of creativity and insight also. Those things you'll start to improve. You start inventing and doing new things. For example, I come up with the idea, call it Starbucks for the soul. That's a creative idea.
Yes.
But that came out of drinking magnetic water. And all kinds of little insights. You start to say, well, we're going to go here, we just decide to go there, and it's just the right time at the right place. So those are insights and stuff that's attributes of the spirit improve. And so it's all part of where you want to go. You want to get the body and the spirit both moving. Nowadays, you just see there's such a craze, especially among young kids. Well, our granddaughter was living with us. She's 26 years old. Every day she'd get up 4 o'clock in the morning before a job and go to the gym for an hour and work out. Oh, she does weightlifting, she does this, or in between she's out running around the block or riding her bike. They're crazy about physics in the body. I said, gee, I wish these guys would be just as crazy about improving the spirit of the person. You know?
Absolutely.
And this is where the education stops. You don't hard to say. You just say something like that. Oh, you're crazy, or you're one of these hippies, or you're all that kind of stuff. You know, people don't want to admit that, and they don't want the responsibility. They want to take a pill to make their spirit better. Well, you don't have a pill, but I think magnetic water helps. You freeze it up, make ice cubes. Magnetic ice cubes might be a good idea. Take them every day, put them in with your water.
What are the challenges that you personally have had in your lifetime with respect to your knowledge and your knowing?
I had some pretty heavy challenges. I lost my first wife in an automobile accident, and so I was single for 4 years, and that took a big bite out of the emotional part of my being and stuff. But it also it freed me, and I was much more creative. I started writing poetry. I started writing books. I started doing somehow the energy that went into the love in connection with my wife, was free to go out and share itself with the world. And I think at that time is when I came up with growing gold, getting gold out of glass, changing new concepts, the crystal filament light bulb. Somehow the creativity part of the being was opened up quite a bit from that. And then what kind of leveled it off and helped me get much better, my high school sweetheart lost her husband, and then we got married again. And so now that kind of leveled it off to the point where I'm pretty stable on creativity. And I feel that it opened me up to understanding the word knowing. There's such a thing as knowledge and such a thing as knowing. And I found myself more conscious of things that I really believe in and I know. And when I talk about these things, right away I get these goosebumps. And people say, well, they're not goosebumps, they're Godbumps. They're confirming it. There's things I just seem to know. I just know that I'm right about talking about SuperLight. I know that I'm right about getting gold out of beer bottles and stuff like this. I know it's in there. I don't know the exact solution to how to get it every time, but I know I'm right when I'm saying this is happening and that. I have a more confidence in this understanding of what knowing is. Stuff, that information that comes from the inside. Knowledge is where you go to a library, you read something, you study it, and you got knowledge and you can recall that. But knowing is already in there. You know that this is right because it's true. And that, I think, is part of the insight that came to me. And it might have been it was activated more from the magnetic water.
What do you think about the role of magnetite and its importance today?
You're starting to hear in all this stuff that discovering magnetites are very important in bird population and bird migration and in things like this. And then they're finding it's in other animals too. Most animals have, and somewhere, either in the pineal gland or up in there in the brain somewhere. Another thing I heard, I can't prove this, is that things like aloe vera is supposed to be very good to help people against Alzheimer's. And guess what aloe vera has? Aloe vera is one of the highest concentrations of monatomic rhodium and iridium. And what's the best source of monatomic rhodium and iridium is magnetite. I've gotten up to 10% rhodium and iridium out of magnetite by assaying them in a microwave and converting them into metal, taking the non-metallic forms of rhodium and iridium and converting them into metal.
Why aren't we having a teaspoon of magnetite a day?
Well, that would be very good, but, who's going to... Well, there are people that sell... I got a little something here. It comes from a company called Magnecare. It's a cell activation liquid complex that contains magnetite. So there are people that are doing this, but, if you try to sell this stuff or advertise it on the radio, they'll tell you you're a kook, and the magnetic medical group will get after you and everything else. But we're going to start to be aware of this stuff. This is very important in our body.
I also heard it could increase your core body temperature if you ingest it.
Yeah, I haven't studied everything, but whatever I've heard, I believe it, because I feel I already know that, and all they're doing is telling me something I know and I agree with already. I have no arguments about any of that stuff and things, And there are people who religiously take that. Other people wear headbands of magnetite. They wear it around their head. In fact, I was thinking of you make these magnetic strips you put inside your hat, put them underneath the band like that, I wear magnets all the time whenever my joints ache. So magnetic energy is very important for healing and regenerating the body. And the magnetite is not magnetic in itself, but it concentrates any magnetic field that's around, which is the Earth. The Earth is loaded with magnetic field, and no matter where we go, we're going to have some magnetic energy in our body, and this will help concentrate it.
I have to ask you a question connected to this, which is about electrosmog and the massive microwave stations that are all over the Earth now and growing faster and faster and faster for new installations, cell phones, all the electro-smog stuff.
Electromagnetic, radiation.
Yeah. So I'd like to bring this in and see what you think. Is there something that could protect us using magnetite or some other type of element for the massive bombardment that we're in?
Yeah, well, we got to speak to some really good antenna people. I'm not an electrical engineer. I have a degree in metallurgy, ceramic engineering, and chemical engineering, but I'm not that hot in electromagnetics. I believe in this whole thing of magnetricity and magnetic energy and stuff. But there's some people who, I know somebody, he makes a symbol called the omega symbol, about a foot in diameter. It's in the shape of the letter omega. And they say you hang that on the house, that catches and reflects back any electromagnetic energy that you don't want in your house. So probably if you could, when you're building your house, you line your wall full of these little magnetic, little omegas in there, or build them in or stick them on the side and stuff like this. Some other people make spirals of copper tubing with a crystal in the middle of it. And there's some people doing that, and I don't have no way of testing that or proving it. But I wish I understood that better.
Can you share a little bit about your background at Los Alamos National Laboratory?
Let me go back even further. The first 10 years of my work, I graduated in 1951 with a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Notre Dame. My first 10 years, I worked with a company called Reaction Motors. A reaction motor is another name for a rocket engine. We built the first liquid rocket engines that were used for the Bell X-1, the X-15, the Viking rockets, and then the Atlas rockets and all that stuff. So I had a lot of experience with high-performance materials, metals, plastics, ceramics, high-temperature materials, poisons, and I worked with 90% peroxide, red fuming nitric acid, 100% liquid oxygen, all these different materials that are used for rocket fuels and everything. And as a result, I'm familiar with working with poisonous and explosive materials 100% and how to handle them safely and so. And so that was the first 10 years. And then after that, I formed my own company, and I was growing crystals. So I have, in two companies, I have about 10 years of experience in crystal growing in high-temperature furnaces with hydrogen furnaces and very high temperatures and high enough temperatures to melt steel. We were growing crystals out of that thing. Silicon carbide, sapphire crystals, silicon nitride, all different kinds of crystal materials for high-strength materials. And I did that both in my own company, and then later I moved to Exxon Research, and I worked at Exxon Research for 9 years and did some work with solar energy there, too. But it all prepared me to work with handling materials safely and stuff. And then after Exxon, I went to have my own company, and then left that, which I was doing crystal growing there, and I ended up at Los Alamos. And at Los Alamos, most of my work there was growing crystals, high-temperature furnaces and stuff. And out of that work that I did there on my own, I developed this crystal filament light bulb idea with my son and I, who was going to high school, and he wanted the science program, and he won the science fair for the state, for the city, the county, and the state on this crystal filament light bulb.
Why grow crystals?
Well, crystals are the most, if the crystals are grown, their perfection is even greater. Like, they say they can tell the difference between synthetic diamonds and real diamonds because synthetic diamonds are perfect. There's no voids, dislocations, or imperfections, or there's less of them because you could grow them in a controlled manner. In fact, most all radios and television, computers and watches, all based on quartz crystals that they grow synthetically because they have such perfection, and all crystals have a certain level of vibrational energy that they could store, or what they call, they can convert electrical energy into vibration or vibrational energy into electrical energy. The I can't get the word right out of me now, but they have that property to convert energy from one form to the other, and so we wouldn't even be, anything wouldn't be on his telephone, we wouldn't be on radio or television. We didn't have crystals. And so crystals give you a very controlled control, a predictable control of energy transfer.
Is that something that's in fiber optic?
Fiber optics are glass. There's no non-crystalline structure there, but the nice transparent structures that communicate with light.
Very interesting. What is your vision with crystal?
I'm sort of out of the crystal business the last 10 years. I shut down my crystal lab. I closed that down. I've been working more in this growing gold business. Is very important right now because we have to get onto the gold standard. We have to make more gold available. I have a process for getting gold out of beer bottles. People don't realize that a typical beer bottle, if you could get all of it out of there, is $180 worth of gold in a standard beer bottle.
That's wild.
So you drink a six-pack and throw it away, there's $1,000 worth of gold going right in the garbage and stuff. You have to use microwaves or plasmas or lasers. You need something that not only gets the energy, but stirs the things up and it tears the molecules apart, releases electrons. David Hudson talks about materials being ormus atoms, and those are precious elements like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium that have lost their electrons, and they're chemically inert. They form like a white powder. But if you could add electrons to them, they'll come back to the metallic form. And I found that working with magnetite, with magnetic energy, and we're working with the microwaves, you could add these electrons back and convert them back into metal.
In my conversation with Joe Blankenship back in May, he was sharing with me that in traditional gold, when they go to get the most amount of gold from the metal, that they pour a chemical material on it. What is it that they pour on the gold to get more of it from the ground?
I don't know.
I think it's like arsenic, or they pour some type of chemical on it.
Well, there's cleaning methods that you could pour stuff on it to what you call refining and stuff,
right?
To get the impurities out of it, and then the gold that you get is a higher quality,
right?
And stuff. That's a refining process.
But you wouldn't need to do that if you're growing your own gold.
No, well, the gold we get from beer bottles contains 85% gold and 15% silver. And the yield we get, when we get the best yield, we don't get this all the time. It's very difficult to work with, and the equipment is hard to process, control. But we've gotten up to 260 ounces per ton of gold, actually of the gold-silver alloy, which is 85% gold and 15% silver. We've had that analyzed at 2 or 3 universities. So the yield is pretty good. It's about equivalent to what you get from placer gold. Placer gold is 80 to 90% gold, and usually doesn't have that much silver in it.
Have you ever worked with NASA?
I worked with NASA, but not for NASA. When I was in the rocket engine business, NASA was just getting started. This was back in the 60s and stuff. But then I worked and developed nose cones that were used on the Atlas and stuff, and then eventually into the Gemini capsule. We developed an installation to use on the retro rockets for the Gemini capsules, which was under NASA control.
Do you think that most of the space shuttles had adequate shielding from radiation, the true radiation in space?
Well, no, most of them don't. And the trouble is that radiation from space is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. We have a first-hand proof that the sun is putting out more radiation. My wife has 2 condos, and she rents one of them to a space engineer who works with Kirtland Air Force Base. Her job is ground-to-space communication with military satellites. So they're communicating back and forth on a daily basis through electromagnetic radiation to these space capsules or these military satellites. About the last shuttle that went up, they just launched that thing, and then a big corona injection mass, CMA, came from the sun, and it knocked out NASA's space communication. They couldn't talk to that satellite, to that rocket ship going up there. So they called this girl who rents my wife's condo, and she said, "You have to help us out. Military communication hardware is hardened against radiation, more so." And she spent 36 hours on landing that damn space shuttle into this station up there, because the radiation from the sun was so strong it knocked out space communication. On NASA's point of view.
What do you think about the Van Allen radiation belt? Do you really think that
yeah, it's there. It's there. There's all kinds of stuff. We haven't, that might be one of the reasons they're not sending guys to the moon again. But of course, another thing is they found there's a lot of living entities up there, and they don't like man coming around at this time. The other backside of the moon was full of all kinds of constructions and things from advanced beings. And all this stuff is going to come out soon. They're not going to be able to keep these secrets any longer. There's a lot of proof that there's high-level beings in spaceships or UFOs or whatever you want to call them all around us, watching us, see if we don't blow ourselves up, or else we go through these Earth transitions safely, because they consider themselves our older brothers and sisters, and they want us to make it, And so they keep talking about when are we going to have a discovery so we could release the information about these guys really exist. The government has been hiding, suppressing all this information about, UFOs and connection with other beings from outer space and everything. So that's all going to come out soon. I don't know exactly when, but they say at night, if you get out and you have these night visions, you can see some of these spacecrafts that are in a stealth position.
You mean night vision goggles, right?
Yeah, night vision goggles. Yeah,
right.
You can see some of these spaceships that are what you might call shielding, but the night vision goggles cover a wider range of radiation, a wider spectrum of colors, and all these guys don't shield they only shield the colors that human eyes can pick up. But the other space goggles night goggles to pick some of that up.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I was just at this last Tesla conference here in Albuquerque, and one of the evenings they had a special evening where you could go out with space goggles. I mean, I keep on saying night vision goggles, and they had a group of them going out to review the satellites, the UFOs that are hanging around. There's always over Albuquerque, so always watching the NASA, the bases here at Kirtland and everything else.
Because of your background as an advanced materials engineer, do you think that the astronauts, over however long the space program has been around, have had adequate shielding on a materials level?
You mean from radiation? No, I don't think they have. I never got involved in that, but all I know is it's getting worse now because the sun is emitting stronger and stronger and more powerful radiation, stuff they can't even measure anymore.
Wow.
I had breakfast with a group of retired engineers from Sandia Laboratories, and their job was space communication with satellites and all that kind of stuff. And even up to 4 or 5 years ago when these guys retired, they were saying strange stuff coming all the time. And then they keep hearing out and more of this stuff, and then you saw that thing I talked about, my wife's renter from her apartment who works in Kirtland. There's all kinds of stuff. So you design it for a certain level of radiation, then it changes. And so you got to keep bringing up a heavier umbrella or whatever you want to call it to protect them more. Even the pilots in airplanes and stuff are starting to feel this more.
I wonder what we could do for the airplanes to better shield the planes.
Well, you could put more in them. It just makes it heavier, and then they can't carry as many customers. And then they, just like the air, the pilots, their air is filtered and it's clean, and they get fresh, clean air all the time. But if you go into the regular part of the airplane, one person has a cold or a sniff or a virus, the air is circulated over and over, and half of the time you go for any plane trip for more than 4 to 6 hours, you end up getting a cold or a sniff or a sore throat because they recycle the air and they don't want to bring in new air. To bring in new air, it's cold. They have to heat it up. It costs more money. Everything is based on this money business as far as business goes.
How fast do you think we could convert our airplanes to the use of SuperLight or magnetic energy?
Well, you won't convert the airplanes. You make a new device. It look almost like a standard car. Instead of a motor in there, you'll have an anti-gravity device in there, and then you'll be able to fly around and go wherever you want. And I think within 10 years they could have that easily. The science is there and understood, but most of it's suppressed.
Do you think most of our society is going to have to go through being dissolved on a infrastructure level for any of this to go through?
Well, let's say you got a blackboard by 20 feet by 40 feet, and you got all the different religions written this way. You got all the economic systems this way. You got all the politics written this way. And every system associated with what we are and what we're doing is written on that blackboard, and they're so interconnected, over-related, interfering with each other, that the whole blackboard has to be erased clean, and we got to start over again.
Tabula rasa.
That's what we need.
So what's your aim right now, your focus right now at this time in your life?
Well, number one thing, I'm being 84 years old in November 4th. First of all, I got to keep my health in good enough shape so that I can contribute some more of my ideas, You see, I have a little idea of almost everything. I search for knowledge and I want to get what I know out as much as I can. And I think one of the things we need more than anything is the energy. We need free energy, and it's there. And one of my new scientific ideas is to build this magnetic battery. I mean, both a magnetic battery and a magnetic light. So we just put a magnet into this flashlight, and it works. I know it's capable. I had this knowing that it's there, and I have a good idea how to do it. I just got to have the time and the energy and the resources to do that. My problem is that my laboratory, if you want to call it that, consists of a half a porch, a half a spare room, and a half a garage. And they don't have they're not heavily financed, and stuff like this. So it's hard for me to do anything that's going to cost money and equipment. But I'm getting down ideas, and I'm trying to get a few helpers, young engineers, to work with me and stuff.
That's great.
So we need the energy, and this magnetic water stuff is so wonderful. We need someone to set that up, and so we could drink magnetic water. Have it. Every house could have it filter in, and run this stuff through it until the people get healthier and keep them stronger. Then you could grow all your plants and stuff like that. All these guys are doing hydroponics now. There are all these white chemicals in there. But also, if you put make a sand bed at the bottom of that hydroponics thing full of magnetite, I think all that stuff would grow faster and healthier and come out with more energy into it. Spiritual energy, not only. So like you say, you'd make bottles of water. You'll call it Starbucks for the soul.
Yeah. Do you like hydroponics principally? Do you think
I think it's very great. I've seen some plans for buildings enough to feed a whole city. It's maybe one city, half a city block, about 80 stories tall, all full of special kind of hydroponics, and there's enough synthetic grown food, directly grown food, to all different forms of, substitutes for meats and vegetables and fruits and everything. And all you had to do is use the right chemicals and energies with the system, with focusing in the lights and everything.
What do you think about the hydroponics not using much of the dirt? In other words, it's not being grown in the ground and it's losing its paramagnetic ability.
That's why I say you got to have, you might just take the ground and grind it up and repress it and squeeze it into pebbles. So at the bottom of their tank, they don't have to, the roots don't have to go into the thing, into the ground or the soil. If the minerals are in there to start with, they come out atom by atom. That's all you need. You don't have to have dissolve break a piece of sand into its components. But the energy is there from that. And then I think with the help of magnetic energy, the plants have the ability to make whatever they need. Just give them the right energy. I don't know if you've seen these studies. These Frenchmen have taken chickens from the time they were born until they're big enough to lay eggs, and gave them a diet that has no calcium in it at all, absolutely nothing. They get old enough to laying eggs with shells made out of calcium. Now, how does that happen? Because the life force of the life force of our bodies, with the DNA molecules and the energy systems that they're associated with, they could do atomic transformation and convert sodium and potassium and other elements into calcium. And same thing, they've done some examples. We'll take sprouts, a standard sprout. They take the sprout bean and they analyze it chemically for all metals, minerals, vitamins, everything. Then they take the same sprouts, same kind of sprouts, and sprout them with nothing but distilled water and sunlight. And into 3 or 4 days, they measure them. There's 5 or 6 times more vitamins in there. Quite a few elements that weren't even there to start with. New metals, new elements, new structures, new things. All the plant, the vital life force of the plant, which tunes into SuperLight. We got all the energy we need to make. It's like a little atomic reactor. You could convert anything into anything else if you have enough energy. And those plants could do that. Their structure of their DNA molecule, their protein structures, all that stuff could tune into this energy and do the converting. That's why they say a perfectly healthy, perfect person can eat a minimum of food and have all the bones and everything else. You can eat stuff without any calcium in it, and they'll grow strong and healthy because the healthy body could do atomic transformation and make whatever. And the spirit, a healthy spirit, can direct that energy into whatever it needs. We don't realize how powerful beings we are. Very little study is done on that. Yeah, if you say stuff like this, it makes you sound like a religious freak.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, that's the way it's been for years and stuff like this. A lot of people say, oh, you can't interfere with this. That work is God's work. God invented all these vegetables and fruits. We have no idea. We shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. And he says, that's God. I say, we are gods. We shouldn't be afraid of this. If we can know it and do it, we can do it because we are children of the Creator. You know, people ask me, well, I have this theory, this idea that, you know, when you die, what things are going to be asked for you from the other side? Well, God says, look, you're children of mine. You're creators. Your job is to go out and create with the talents that I gave you. Everyone is given a different talent, and you're going to be judged on how much did you use of that talent that I gave you? How much creation did you do with the talent I gave you? And did you do it by being a nice guy? It's the same things you have to do. Our job is to create and to be a nice person while we're doing it at the same time. That's 95% of what but each person has their own ability, their own talents, their own directions, and we have to use them in the direction, in the power, in the things that we have. Some people are artists, some are engineers, some are organizers, some are good people with numbers. You have to use what He gave you, and that's the only thing you don't have to be. You don't have to build any bridges. You don't have to make any gold. You don't have to do. You have to just do what you're capable of doing, and that's all you're going to be held responsible for.
It's very wise. How is your health now?
Very good. I'm going through a problem now, trying to discover why my blood pressure is going up. For the last 5 weeks, listen to this story. I've been to 5 doctors. I've had my medicines changed 4 times. I've been to the ER for 12 hours twice. I've been X-rayed 4 times. I've had CAT scans. I've had MRIs, and my blood pressure keeps going up. But it started in the morning, it's 140 over 70. By the end of the evening, no matter how many pills I take, it's 220 over 110 or something like this. And then the doctors will say, well, the problem is, what's your heart? Then they check the heart. Nothing wrong with your heart. Then they say, well, the problem is you were dehydrated. Check me out and give me water. No, not dehydrated. The problem is you're constipated. You got to get your pipes cleaned. So they clean out the pipes. They do a CAT scan. Everything's, and still doesn't do anything. And so finally, and then I went to acupuncture. Well, you have this thing called paresthesia, which is a wiggling of the nerves. The nerves feel like they're wiggling all the time. Instead of, when you're supposed to have high blood pressure, your left arm hurts. My left arm doesn't hurt. My left neck, on the upper part of my neck, has this wiggly feeling. They call it paresthesia. Whenever that's up, the pressure's up. So it's a nervous thing. Something is causing the nerves to activate. I think my body is sensitive to these earth changes that are coming. These new strong energies that are coming in. They say some people are going to be more tuned into it than others. I might be overtuned on this damn stuff.
There may be something also going on in the area that's happening at night, but not in the day.
It could be. It could be as it gets darker. It keeps creeping up and creeping up. So first he used to just take 2 blood pressure pills, one in the morning, one at night. No problem. The last 5 years, it was completely under control. And now it's getting more and more, and I'm up to 7 pills, 8 pills, 9 pills, barely break even, But when it's high like that, it makes me tired. At the end of the day, I want to lay down and sleep or rest and all that kind of crap, stuff going on. But otherwise, in between, like right now, this morning, I feel great. I could talk a little bit. I have a little cough in my throat, little phlegm. I've always had that all my life anyway. I've always had a snot nose or whatever you want to call it. But I hope that doesn't make me a snotty person.
I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think so. Have you had a chance to meet with Phil Callahan over where you are?
Oh, yeah, I met him 2 or 3 times. And he's losing his marbles now, they say. And it's a shame. And Joe Blankenship, you said you just talked to him recently?
Yes.
He had some health problems, too, and stuff. And so.
But he's definitely not lost his marbles.
Oh, I know.
Joe is as sharp as a tack. If he goes out, he's going out fighting and talking.
Yeah.
He's a great synthesizer. Is there anybody in the world that you have not met that you would like to meet still?
Well, I mean, if Tesla was around, I would love to have met him, And I liked Edison when I was a kid. My mentor was Edison. I'm inventing all the time. I like this. The guy says, "Are you tired today?" Well, I'm inventing all day long. No wonder I get tired. I have about 30 patents, but when I was at Exxon, I had about 50 patent disclosures, but we didn't act on all of them and stuff. So I could almost think of a solution to any problem.
I have a question about your ceramic work. What is ceramic made of?
Ceramics are the rocks,
right?
The stones and the glass, and anything that's not metallic or not organic. Okay. Plastics are organic, and metals are metallic, and anything in between, like the rocks and the stuff. Generally, ceramics are harder and more brittle than metals.
Right.
But I made, when I was in my business, I was making single crystal fibers, which were the strongest and toughest materials on the planet Earth at the time. And they were such perfect crystals, I tell people, you come into my lab and look at my sapphire crystals. I said, until you die and meet your maker, you'll never see anything more perfect than these. These are the most perfect crystal structures. No voids, dislocations, for imperfections, all that chemical impurities were not there. It was the most, and as a result, they were the strongest materials in the world. They were 10 times stronger than piano wire, carbon fibers, or anything else. They were very strong and very powerful and everything. So.
I'm surprised Los Alamos Labs let you go.
Well, it is, the job is the boss.
Yeah.
When I first went there, I had 2 of the greatest bosses I ever had. And I loved the job, and they went along, and I had just doing great. And we were writing up patent disclosures and doing this. And every time they ever had any visitor come to the lab, they'd send them over to my lab. Or any time they want to have a show and tell, they'd let me give a lecture or a seminar. Then what happened is my boss gets promoted, and they sent in another guy. And I went for the best, absolutely everything is the same, the project the same, just the boss changed. Went from the best job I ever had to the worst job I ever had. My other bosses believed in me, and they saw my creative work, and whenever ever had anything to type a report, the secretaries would give John priority. He's bringing in money. I was there for 2 or 3 years. I brought in $7 million work for about 5 or 6 engineers and stuff like this. Then this boss gets promoted. He goes out. A new boss comes in. And he was the worst guy, most picky, uni-type person. So I come into his name was George. I come into the office one day and say, "George, how you doing?" "Oh, he's so happy. He's so happy." He said, "What? Tell me the story, George." I said, "Well, he went to the bank last Friday night and made a deposit. It was 10 minutes to 3, just before they closed. When he got his report back, they said that money was deposited on Monday because they closed the books down earlier. So he was pissed off and mad and angry. "Oh, I lost the days of interest on my deposit." So he goes into the bank, he argues with the teller. It doesn't work. Then the teller's assistant manager. He ends up spending an hour and a half arguing with the vice president of the bank. He finally got the vice president of the bank to give him that extra day's interest. So after 2 hours of arguing and everything else, he made his 22 cents interest for the money for one day. You know, people spend hours and hours worrying about nickels and dimes. It's crazy. That's the kind of, here I'm inventing and going and moving and changing and moving as fast as the speed of light. And you can't do that. Well, all emergencies must be scheduled in advance. You can't vary your program. You go on a program, you lay out a thing, and the process changes. You find out that what your assumptions weren't right. You got to change. Oh, you can't change it. You wrote it in a program. You got to follow it to the letter. Every nickel and dime, every dot and corner, everything. It was so fanatic, or what the word is about making change, that I just didn't get along with him. 6 months, I took early retirement and got out of there.
That's a bummer. This happens to good people all over the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the same time, my wife had just died. And my first wife was killed in an automobile accident.
Yes.
And so for the 8 years I was there, I was the first one in, the last one out. I did work extra, come in on Saturdays and Sundays, run in the crystal growth lab and all that stuff. And so when my wife died, I came to George and I said, I'd like to be able to come in a little bit late because I still have a 13-year-old son. We have to go shopping. I have to prepare food. We have to do this, and I have to help him get going. For 2 or 3 weeks, he let me do it. Oh, you can't do that anymore. You can't do it anymore because it's bad influence on the technicians. They might think that you're goofing off. I said, for years I did. Oh, but that wasn't in my watch. I don't know anything about you working for all that extra hours. That's the way these guys think. And these are the guys running our national laboratories. People who think like that. The robots thinking in convention, and that's why the whole lab has gone to pot since then. My son just took early retirement from there. He said the shit was so deep, to use the word, he had to wear hip boots going to work and back. Then come home, take them off, and forget about them. You used to be able to take work home. You used to be able to do this. They're so security conscious and so, pedantic about things, nickel and diming, that you can't get anything done. The national lab has really gone to pot.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's the way the government runs things these days. It's a shame. It's like the military. Everything has to be done by the book.
Let's talk about something really, really exciting, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Okay.
Talk about superconductivity.
Oh, I love that.
That's where the action is. Let's bring it.
Absolutely. I don't know whether you have got my 2 DVDs. I got a DVD on SuperLight, which was a talk I gave at Tesla in 2008.
No, but I hope you'll send them to me.
I will. And then the year later, I gave the one on room temperature superconductivity at 2009. Tesla Tech at 2009.
Oh, wow.
And what it is, everybody's starting to get more emphasized now with all this work being done on these buckyballs, is going to be the key to working with SuperLight energy. And because superconductivity, if you made a tube of superconductivity and just and put magnetite in the center, you'll have the world's best electrical conductor, because everything that's running through that will be magnetic energy travels. See, here's the thing. Let me get back and go. You know what a regular electrical conductor is? You have a piece of metal, right?
Right.
That conducts electrons, but you can't leave it unshielded because if it touches anything, it shorts out, right? So you have to have a cover on it. You have to have an insulator. So a good electrical wire is a magnetic electrical conductor surrounded by electrical insulator. Okay, now I got this information from Callahan. Callahan says we got magnetic monopoles. Instead of electricity is the flow of electric monopoles. SuperLight, or magnetricity, is the flow of magnetic monopoles. The trouble is, everything is a conductor for magnetic monopoles, except superconductors for metal. A superconductor for metal is a super insulator for magnetic energy. So now we could take a material like magnetite or wood or bark or anything, which is normally a conductor for magnetic monopoles, and surround it by electrical conductor. And the best electrical conductor is superconductors. And so the ideal wire for magnetricity is going to be a shield filled with a magnetic conductor inside. which is something like a plastic fishing line. Most everything is a superconductor for magnetic energy. That's why magnetic fields generally have a tendency to just continually propagate out to the whole universe. That's why they're talking about instant communication on the spirit level, because that's magnetic energy. A mother could sense her husband, her father dying, or her son dying across the other side, right through the whole ocean or through the earth instantly, because that's emotions are magnetic energy. Magnetic energy, there's no shielding for them. Normally, everything is a superconductor for magnetic energy. The trick is you want to make a shield for it so that you could make a tube out of it. I learned this from Callahan. Callahan talks about trees and paramagnetic energy in the soil. He talks about how the Irish made these towers to collect magnetic energy from the sun and run it through the earth, and it will pulse out magnetic energy to all the plants and things. And with 2 miles around these big Irish towers made of special kinds of paramagnetic and diamagnetic rocks, everything would grow better within 2 miles of it and use less water and be stronger and healthier. They had about 600 of these towers planted all around Ireland. So at the time, it started around 600 A.D., and they said, they built those towers so they could watch for the Vikings. The Vikings didn't come to 1,000 years. They come 400 years later. They were building them so that they could farm their land better. And so they knew how to tune into magnetic energy from the sun. And so he says, what happens is the sun is emitting magnetic monopoles and dipoles. If a dipole goes through a solar flare, it splits it in half into magnetic north and south magnetic monopoles. If you take a magnet here on Earth and break it in half, you cannot separate the north and south. You end up with 2 little magnets instead of one north and one south. But when those magnetic dipoles go through the sun, they break them up into north and south magnetic monopoles. The south poles come to the earth and they go into the soil, into the stones, into the rocks, like these towers for that. And the north go into the leaves and branches in the plants themselves. And so then what happens is the roots of the trees pick up the south magnetic monopoles and run up through there and connect with the north magnetic monopoles, which are in the leaves and branches, and recombine and give that extra energy to the process called photosynthesis. I don't know if you remember in general science we studied photosynthesis.
Yes.
We said, this is still a mystery. We can't understand how the plant could do this because there's not enough energy in sunlight to break down water and CO2. Because if the sunlight would break down water, we wouldn't have any oceans. So you need more energy. Where does that extra energy come from? Callahan said it comes from the recombination of the north and south magnetic monopole. The roots of the plants collect the south magnetic monopoles, and they run them up through the roots. And the roots, he says, are like waveguides because magnetic monopoles, the magnetic energy flows through the wood part of the tree, which is everything is a conductor, but it's surrounded by bark, which has a liquid in it. So there's an electrical conductor surrounding a magnetic conductor, and that's what makes these waveguides to bring the south magnetic monopoles from the soil up through the tree, up through the roots, and recombine in the leaves and release that energy into the chlorophyll molecule, acts as an energy storing device, and stimulates plant growth. All that energy that was used by the sun solar flares to break up magnetic monopoles are given back to the plants in the photosynthesis process. It allows them to grow. And that works. I put magnetite on the soil on my grass, and this is a perfect example of good news and bad news. The good news is the grass grows, and it's green, and it's beautiful. The bad news is you got to cut the grass every 2 days or 3 days. It grows so much faster.
Now, you're not even talking about putting charged water with magnetite on the grass. You're talking about putting magnetite.
Regular magnetite on the soil. It collects more magnetic energy.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and this is what we got from Callahan. So a conductor for magnetic energy is an electrical conductor surrounding an insulator. So the wood of the branches and the roots and the trees is normally electrical insulator, but electrical insulator is a magnetic conductor. So you have a magnetic conductor surrounded by the bark, which has got liquid in it, which is an electrical conductor. An electrical conductor surrounding a magnetic conductor, you make a perfect wire for, and this is where I'm working on making a magnetic battery, magnetic wires and stuff like this. We got to get a flexible wire of a magnetic conductor surrounded by an electrical conductor. So the ideal thing would be something like a fishing line, which is a good plastic, plastic wire, plastic rope or cord, or I can't get the word out, fishing line, and gold plate that, or silver plate it, or aluminum plate it, and now we'll have wires to run magnetic energy. We'll make magnetic motors, magnetic batteries, magnetic everything else. Now that we got a conductor for it, we can make coils, we can make transformers, everything redone electrically has to be redone magnetically, and then we'll have energy 10 billion times more, easier available, never run out. You don't have to generate it. No, we don't pollute the planet. We don't do anything to pollute the planet, to do anything, because the energy's there. We just have to collect it and direct it. And that's the work I'm working on now, try to make a magnetic light, magnetic battery, magnetic transformers, everything we can. Everything run on what I call magnetricity. Electricity, a flow of electric monopoles. Magnetricity, the flow of magnetic monopoles.
Beautiful.
And that's where we're going, and that's what we have to do. And that's where the time and energy should be spent.
Knowing what you know and having worked where you've worked and the kind of operations you've worked in, what do you think it's going to run to ramp up the infrastructure for what's needed to bring that through?
To make this what they call this miniature fluorescent lamp, you know how much the government gave these companies like GE and stuff to get that developed? $20 to $30 million.
But we know that these big companies pad the heck out of their development.
They could have done it themselves, but because the government wanted to do that, they rejected my crystal filament light bulb, which would be more efficient and they pushed for this damn thing. And I didn't spend more than a couple $100 to develop a light bulb 10 times better than what they had. Wouldn't burn out, use less energy and stuff. But the point is, you got to spend some money to build a laboratory. I would like to rebuild a laboratory, and I would need $25 million, $5 million for the lab and the ground and everything else to go with it. And then I want to be able to hire people like my son. I got a son with a PhD. He works for Philips Lighting in the high-intensity lighting bulb business. But he's making $110,000, $120,000 a year, and he's got 3 kids, and he's got a house. I can't say, well, a guy gave me $1 million. Come on down, work for 3 to 6 months. Let's see if we can prove this idea out. I want to make magnetic batteries or magnetic lights. He can't sell his house and his family and all that stuff. If I can't give him enough money to say, you work here for 4 years and I'll give you full benefits, and you can build a new house and I'll buy your old house for you, and I need 3 or 4 people like that, I need $1 million or so just to hire a good engineer or a scientist.
Right.
He's got a PhD in material science. He's worked for 11 years with Philips Lighting. It's like a GE of Europe. It's one of the top industrial companies in the world. I'm going to be able to hire him away for nickels and dimes. You want to do the job right, you got to get good people.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I learned. I need people I can trust and understand. I've worked with my son on stuff. He's good. He gets the best bonuses and the best salary of all the engineers working for Philips Lighting up there in Bath, New York. So he's got to be good.
Yes.
He's competing against the best scientists in Europe and everything else. 30% of their production up there is on ideas that he developed in the last 4 or 5 years. But that's the kind of people we need to get into new science. You got to have enough money to support them and say, bring your family down here and let's set up shop. And I got 2 or 3. My last engineer that I had in my crystal growing lab, he's down in Georgia. I'd like to bring him up. I have 2 or 3 other people in that mine like that. So I need to get 4 or 5 good PhD equivalent 10 to 20 year experience people with good hands-on engineering to do this kind of stuff. And we would make all the energy in the world with non-polluting and everything else. We'd get into the stuff for, We could even get into the growing gold business and stuff. My idea on growing gold is that I would like to have about 1,000 people making 2 or 3 ounces of gold a week in their own little microwave in the garage, instead of getting into one big company throwing out tons of stuff. So we need more gold. We got to improve our economic standard. We need non-polluting food. We get all these guys in hydroponics with magnetic energy, and then we make our own magnetic lights and magnetic batteries and all this kind of stuff, so we get stop the polluting in the earth. We got to honor the earth and do the stuff and take the gift that God gave us. He gave us this magnetic energy. It's energy of the spirit world. We're going to use it in the physical. Our body is becoming more spirit. Our mind is becoming more spirit activated, and so we need energy to go with I hate to use that word, new age, but whatever you want to call it, we're going there. Whether you like it or not, the earth is going to go, and if we don't go with them, we're going to be left behind. That's what I understand. This whole thing about 2012 is third dimensions going into the fourth and fifth dimension, and that's more magnetic energy. That's where we're going. Our spirit is going to be, we're bodies are creatures of body and spirit. We're supposed to be 50-50. We're about 95-5. Even that much, most of the people don't give the spirit even 5% of their time. You know? But that's where the creativity is. That's where the initiation is. That's where the direction is, where we're going. It's all in becoming true human beings, which is full complements of body and spirit. That's where we have to go and what we have to do.
It's very exciting to listen to you.
I could contribute to that somehow. I'm putting along here. I'm just an old fart, 84 years old.
You're remarkable.
And my wife says, but I'm inventing all day long. No wonder I get tired. Or something like that. Well, Kim, I really enjoy talking to you about this. I am sure we haven't finished anything. We're just opening the door, but there might be enough people interested to do something.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And I believe that if my time is right, my wife says, you shouldn't be asking for $25 million. I said, there's no limit on how much is available out there. God created everything in abundance. Only limitations we have are from man's thoughts themselves.
Yeah, I agree
with
you.
The only problems we have is why did God create the evil thing here? God doesn't create anything. Anything that's evil that doesn't work was created by man. Look at the thorns. Someone else, roses, years ago, a high-level being created roses. And someone else came along and created the thorns that go with them, just like we create the internet, and it's beautiful. And someone comes along and creates these viruses. Some people are nasty, and nasty guys create the bad things, and the good guys create the good things. So what we got to do is get more money and more support for the good guys and knock out these nasty guys and get them out of business. That's where we're going. That's what we have to do. And I hope I can do something to contribute to that.
I think you've been doing a lot to contribute.
I got plenty of ideas. The 25 million pocket that I could dip into isn't there, or it's got a zipper on it. So if it opens up, I'm ready to go. Meanwhile, I'll just keep putting along here and doing my mad science and wear my wizard suit once a year when the kids come around on Halloween to pick up something from the door.
I really enjoy talking with you, and I'm so glad you've come to the show. And we have definitely scratched the surface, but we are at the interior of the first level. And I really want to thank you for joining me on It's Rainmaking Time, and I hope that you will come back and we can speak further.
We'll see what kind of response we get and what my new work is doing and stuff like this. And then, there'll always be something to talk about, because to stand still is to go backwards. We have to keep moving.
Exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with, learning from, and listening to Dr. John Molesky. If you would like to get in touch with him, you can reach him by going to what website, John?
At J.V. Milewski.
J.V. Milewski.
Yeah, Milewski, Milewski at AOL.com. Thank you, audience, for listening. And don't be ashamed about writing to me. On the phone business, my wife has phone messages. We got messages. We got calls. Most of the time, I can't answer the phone. But I could write back, and if you put a number on there when I have free time, if you got something of interest, we'll talk about it, okay? There's no limit to where we go. We have to change. We got to erase the blackboard and start writing stuff correctly and rightly. There's so much hanky-panky and scandals going on in the world that we have to get ahead. The creative good business has to create faster than the bad guy.
And it's my way of saying it's rainmaking time.
Exactly. God bless you, sweetheart.
God bless you,
How
Stan.
come I love you so much, Betty?
God bless you.
You would get the biggest hugs in the world.
Yeah, and you would too. You're a brother after my own heart.
I'm a huggy and snuggy person.
Lots of love, and I look forward to meeting you soon.
Thank you.